You don't know me. I haven't had an opportunity to talk to you yet because I've been tweeting or I've been posting on Instagram or posting on Facebook, and I write these long diatribes, but I never felt the need to actually get on camera to say anything to anybody because I figured, who am I? Who am I to raise my voice? I have plenty of stuff that I've written. If someone wants to look at what I have to say, they can go ahead and read my words. But it's gotten to the point now where words do not do enough. There are no words to express how I'm feeling, and there are no words to express what's going on in the world today. It is completely crazy. Seeing what the press is doing is despicable. I have never seen the level of Jew hatred, racism, bigotry, and anti-Semitism as I have in the last, let's call it 2 months. It has been nonstop. It has been a barrage of misinformation, certainly, which is something we've gotten very used to on both sides of the political aisle. But this is something where it seems like every single website that I look at, every single newspaper that I read, every single news report that I watch has the same misinformation as if they are all reading from the same broken dictionary. Words have meaning. Words have definitions. And the way they are using words as weapons on these newscasts, in these newspapers, in these articles, on these podcasts is not only despicable, it's dangerous. Some of it feels like it's even treasonous. And I'm not a lawyer, but I do know when something is trying to break down the fabric of society, hurt America, hurt Israel, hurt our allies, and hurt good people. And yeah, there is a good versus evil thing going on here. There is a very clearly delineated good versus evil here. You have one group, and let's be real clear, one group that are terrorists, period. They've always been terrorists. They are called terrorists. They are qualified as terrorists. And the only people that don't think they're terrorists are terror apologists, liars, and Jew haters, period. I have in front of me right now 2 news reports, both from the same publication. 14 Palestinians killed by Israeli strikes since ceasefire expired, says Gaza Health Ministry. That's the headline. What's the Gaza Health Ministry? Hamas. What is the Gaza Health Ministry? Terrorists. What is the Gaza Health Ministry? Proven liars, time and time and time again. The way they phrase it is very careful. 14 Palestinians killed. That's the opening 3 words of the headline. 14 Palestinians killed by Israeli strikes. That puts the blame in a very specific place. That lets us know Israel is at fault. That lets us know the Palestinians are the victims, especially the way they phrased it. Not only do words matter, but the order of words matter, the selection of words matter. And the press knows this. They use these words as weapons. They let us know how they feel, who they think is wrong, who they think is right, who they think we should blame, how they're inciting people against those who they decide they want incitement against. Let's look at another headline as an example. Israel launches strikes on Gaza as fighting resumes after truce expires. We start off with Israel being the aggressor. Israel launches strikes on Gaza. Okay, as fighting resumes. Fighting, well, we see Israel inside this side. Underneath it in tiny little letters, Israeli officials blame Hamas for breaking truce with a barrage of rockets from Gaza aimed at southern Israel. Now, did Hamas launch a barrage of rockets at southern Israel? Yes. Is it fact? Yes. Does Hamas even claim credit for it? Yes. So why does it read this way? Why does it read that Israel launched strikes on Gaza as the headline, as opposed to Hamas launches strikes on Israel as the headline? Isn't that weird? Isn't it a weird, specifically phrased thing that is specifically meant to make you feel a certain way? Think a certain person is the bad guy? Think a certain person is the good guy? It is designed to confuse you into not recognizing who is at fault. They also don't just say that Hamas launched a strike on Israel. They don't. No, they make sure that in the headline it says Israel launches a strike on Gaza, but they don't say that when actually what happened needs to be reported on. They say Israeli officials blame Hamas. They blame Hamas for breaking the truce. And then finally, later in the sentence, they get to, with a barrage of rockets from Gaza aimed at southern Israel. Notice the phrasing. Israel launches a strike on Gaza. Israeli officials blame Hamas for breaking the truce with a barrage of rockets aimed, I mean, somewhere, I don't know, in southern Israel. That is bullshit walking right there. That is the kind of thing that lets you know this is specifically designed to make you feel a certain way. It is a lie, not a lie of information, not even a lie of omission, a lie of phrasing, a lie of selectivity. It's an insidious lie because it's something that happens on a regular basis. I read an article yesterday from a publication called The Ankler. They were talking about people getting fired in Hollywood. And they said 2 people were fired for Islamophobic tweets. No couching of anything, no other words to confuse the issue. They were fired for Islamophobic tweets. I think we think that's pretty righteous. They were Islamophobic tweets. It's a fact. It says it right there in the article, and they were fired for those tweets. Right. Then the next paragraph talks about the other side. And ooh, listen to this phrasing. Melissa Barrera. Remember Melissa Barrera? Neither do I. But apparently she's in the Scream movies, or she was, because she's been fired from the Scream movies. Why? Well, according to this article, because the company that makes Scream deemed some of her tweets anti-Semitic. So they weren't just anti-Semitic tweets. I mean, they were. I mean, pretty specifically, pretty right down the middle Jew hatred, trafficking and dangerous stereotypes and inciting violence and hatred against the Jews. But maybe they're not anti-Semitic because according to this article, just this one group, this production company, I mean, whatever, they deemed it anti-Semitic. Just an opinion. The other ones were Islamophobic tweets, and these were deemed anti-Semitic. Interesting phrasing. Also notice that whenever CNN wants to report on anything that's going on in this particular area, they let us know 500 people died, says the health ministry. Or they let us know Israeli officials say 20 people were killed. Why does that matter? Well, psychologically it matters because if you tell me that 500 people died, right away I'm emotional. Right away I have been given this information that's going to make me feel sad. It's going to make me feel sympathetic. It's going to make me feel like whoever had those people die, they should be pitied. They're the underdog. They're the victims. But when you tell me Israeli officials say, I was like, what? Oh, what did they say? I'm already skeptical. You've already prepared me to be skeptical by phrasing it specifically that way. So by the time you tell me 20 people died, I'm like, yeah, you say that. It's not like an Islamophobic tweet that definitely happened. It's like they're deemed anti-Semitic. They said 20 people died. Over here, 500 people died. They said. So those things actually make a difference. So this is nothing but Jew hatred. It is nothing but racism. It is nothing but the same bullshit that's going on with all these NGOs that decide when they do and do not want to get involved. Whether it's the Red Cross, whether it's Human Rights Watch, whether it's Amnesty International, whether it's the United Nations, whether it's any one of these groups that is supposedly benevolent. I grew up hearing the name, the United Nations, as a revered name, Amnesty International as a respected organization, the Red Cross, beyond reproach. Little did I know that the United Nations has always been a sewer, has always been biased. I say this to people and they go, are you crazy? The United Nations is a racist organization? How is it possible? Well, if you don't know, then you don't know. And I didn't. I just assumed United Nations benevolent. So let me give you some stats, see if it moves the needle in terms of how you think of the United Nations. From 2006 through 2022. So just last year, the United Nations Human Rights Council, which we'll get into in a minute, how ridiculous and corrupt that particular council is within an already corrupt organization. But I digress. The Human Rights Council has adopted 99 resolutions against Israel. Of course, we're past that now in 2023, so we've broken the 3 digits. But by 2022, between 2006 and then, 99 resolutions against Israel. How many against, let's say, Venezuela? Okay, a place that regularly, and everyone knows about it, knowingly violates human rights. 3 against Venezuela. How many against Russia? We've all heard Russia has been a little bit of a problem when it comes to human rights, right? 4 against Russia. How many against Iran, the #1 state sponsor of terror in the world? #1 by far, with a bullet, with a lot of bullets, actually. 13 against Iran. Just want to remind you, we're at 99 for Israel so far. How about one of the worst, Bashar al-Assad, Syria? They're going to be on the higher end. And I will tell you ahead of time, they're ahead of Russia, they're ahead of Iran, they're ahead of Venezuela. 41 against Syria. That's major. 99 against Israel. If you double what Syria has, you still have to add a bunch. Let's put aside the Human Rights Council for a minute. We'll come back to it, okay? Let's talk about the UN in general as a governing body, the General Assembly of the UN. They also adopt resolutions specifically against countries for various violations. So just for the fun of it, how many resolutions from 2015 to 2022, how many resolutions did the United Nations General Assembly adopt against every country in the world besides Israel? I mean, collectively, when we add them all together. What do you think? I'll tell you. It's 68. Okay, 68 resolutions collectively worldwide. We're not doing so bad. 2015, 2022 must have been a quiet time. How many against Israel in that time, that 7-year period? 140. 140 against Israel, a country the size of New Jersey, a country made up of Jews who are nonviolent on the whole. And if you don't believe that, then you are either a Jew hater, an idiot, misinformed, or a liar who lies to yourself and to other people. 140 against Israel, 68 against every other country combined. Let's look at 1 year, okay, just from the General Assembly. Let's look at 2022. Let's look at last year. This year's not over yet. I can't wait to see what numbers we hit this year. But 2022 alone, North Korea, bastion of democracy that it is, 1 resolution. Afghanistan, Afghanistan, 1. Myanmar, 1. Lebanon, Pakistan, Algeria, Turkey, China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Cuba, Iraq. Why am I lumping all those together? Oh, because 0, none, 0. How about Hamas? Hamas, who beheads all the gay people they can find, who does not let Jews into their territory with big red signs at the entrance that says, if you come in here, you dead. Hamas, who regularly carries out terror attacks and loves to take credit for them. How about Hamas, who has taken over the UNRWA, which is a part of the United Nations where they teach stuff to kids, and what they're teaching is despicable lies and violence and hatred. In fact, there's a great video where they interview a bunch of kids from the UNRWA schools, and all of them say, what are you taught? I'm taught to hate Jews. I can't wait to be a suicide bomber. I want to stab a Jew. I want to hit a Jew with my car. On and on and on and on. Good stuff, really educational. So Hamas, how many against Hamas? This is going to be interesting. Oh, 0. By the way, side note, post-October 7th, which they've also not only taken credit for, but also said they want to do over and over and over again. And yesterday, the head of Hamas said October 7th was just a rehearsal. How many in 2023, in the year of October 7th? Also 0. They don't think they're a terrorist organization. They have no problem. All good. Back to 2022. How many against Israel? Well, before I tell you, I'll say that there is no country in the world that in 2022 received more than one resolution from the United Nations General Assembly? Not one. Israel, 15. Are you starting to get it? Are you starting to understand the disparity? Are you starting to understand that United Nations is a hateful, garbage organization that essentially has been hijacked by Jew haters and racists and people looking for just a way to put a needle in the eye of Israel and every Jew in the world over and over and over again? I'll say one last thing about the United Nations and then I'll move on, which is, if you're still not sure after hearing all those numbers, let me give you one more piece of information and I'll just let it sit here and you can make a decision about whether it affects your opinion or not. Elections were just held for the United Nations Human Rights Council 2024 to 2026 class. Let's take a look at some of the people that were voted in. Brace yourself. Cuba, Qatar, China, Sudan, Eritrea. Some of you may not have heard of Eritrea, but it always ends up at number one on the list of countries with the worst and most vile dictatorships in the world. Awesome. Kuwait, Algeria, Burundi, Somalia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Bangladesh, and let's put a cherry on top of this shit sundae. Iran was just appointed the chair of the 2023 United Nations Human Rights Council Social Forum. Iran. If you're still not sure that the United Nations is a garbage dump, trash fire, shit heap of an organization, then you don't want to know. You can ignore everything like that monkey. But the truth is out there and you can't deny it. Let's move past the UN. What about Amnesty International? Another one of those groups that when I was a kid sounded like one of those benevolent organizations, one of those organizations designed to uphold the higher good. Amnesty International is another racist, anti-Semitic organization. If you're not sure about that, just look at what they actually write. I know that the name sounds good, but if you don't know what they're actually saying, the name is meaningless. This is a group that not only created the concept of Israel falsely being an apartheid state, they were the ones who appropriated that word. Let's stop for a moment. Apartheid is a word that has a definition. Apartheid means an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over any other racial group. This is a country in Israel that has Arabs as full citizens, Muslims as full citizens. They have them in the government. They are able to vote. They have them on the Supreme Court. It's the furthest thing from apartheid by definition. It is impossible, if you actually know what's going on, to think of Israel as an apartheid state. Amnesty International doesn't care about that. They don't care about definitions of words. They don't care about reality. Instead, they single out the fact that there is a wall that has been put up between Gaza and Israel proper. Why is that wall there? Well, the wall wasn't always there. Any idea why the wall was erected? I'll give you one guess. It's because a bunch of people from Gaza started blowing themselves up or stabbing people or hitting people with their cars gleefully. Or as one lady dressed as a religious Jewish woman with a big exploding belt under her dress, pretending to be pregnant so she could get into a large group of people and kill. That's why the wall was put up. The wall was put up because we had to stop them from trying to murder us. Before Hamas was in power, of course, there was another terrorist organization in power, but they weren't as bad as Hamas, as it turns out. And people weren't blowing up on a regular basis. Happened occasionally, but not enough for us to put up a wall. By the time the blockade was put in place, there was a good reason for it. The other thing they call out is that there are separate roads going from the West Bank into Israel proper. Now, why is that? Well, as I stated, if you're going to go into the West Bank, there's a big, giant red sign that states, Jews keep out, in short. You want to go from the West Bank into Israel? That's how all those suicide bombers got in, because we were like, here you go. Jews can't go there because they'd be dead in a heartbeat. And they tell you that. And when people tell you who they are, believe them. These people tell us on a regular basis, not only that they want to kill the Jews, that they want to wipe out all of us, that they want to wipe Israel off the map, but that they love death. They love killing their own children. One woman whose son needed a life-saving operation, but they couldn't do it in Gaza. So she brought him over to Israel because she was allowed to. Brought him over, and the Israeli hospital is performing the surgery, saving her son's life. And while he is in surgery, she's chilling out, and she says, well, I don't know, they're doing it, so fine, but like, life isn't precious. Who cares? This isn't real. No, you people think life is precious. That's why you get all sad whenever anyone dies. We love when people die. We love it. In fact, there's a whole interview with Palestinians where they talk about how much they love when their kids die, how it's doing a good deed because their kids are pure, you see. If their kids are pure, that means they automatically go to paradise. Paradise is the real place you want to hang out. This is nothing. Life here is this plane. Bleh. They can't wait. And so if you die in the process of killing the Jews, for instance, or Death to America or any of those other things, you sit by his side. If you don't, you might not end up in paradise, and this life doesn't mean anything, so it's all about the next life, which means hurry up and kill some Jews. And for children, because they are pure of heart, because they haven't sinned yet, especially babies, they automatically get a free pass to paradise. So it's a good thing, which is why they keep putting their babies on purpose into places they know bombs will fall. It's why they keep stopping people on purpose from leaving areas they want to leave where they know bombs will fall. People who want to leave, people who have been warned by the Israeli army, the most humane army in the history of modern warfare. Even though we keep getting these warnings from the US government and others, you guys better be careful. We've told them to be careful. They keep saying press conferences, we told them, don't, as if we're not. But we are, insanely so. We send text messages, we call, we drop leaflets, we drop knock bombs, which are bombs that don't explode. They just maybe a little pookie, just to let you know, this building's going down, get out. We give people time to gather and leave. Can you imagine that happening in any other war, any other place in the world? But I love the way the Americans phrase it. We told them, please be careful, please. It's as if saying, I told him not to rape those ladies. I hope he doesn't rape. I told him not to. I told him. I mean, that guy though, who knows, right? Who knows with Israel? I told them to be safe. I told them to be careful. Back to Amnesty International, you're talking about a group that doesn't condemn rocket fire into Israel, but loves to call Israel genocidal, loves to say that Israel's involved with ethnic cleansing. Again, two words that have a specific meaning. Genocide, a word that was created as a result of the destruction of the Jewish people, or the attempted destruction of the Jewish people, a word that has a meaning. There's intention behind genocide, trying to wipe out a race. How could we possibly be genocidal if this group of people that we are supposedly trying to genocide multiplies 6 times in the time we're trying to do it? Jews haven't even come back to the numbers we had prior to the Holocaust. That's a genocide. That's why the word was invented. We are lower now. Ethnic cleansing has a meaning too, where you cleanse an ethnicity. Right there in the title. Again, they keep getting bigger and bigger numbers. So Jews who are pretty good at what they do, we're startup nation, we end up having these amazing IQs, the best inventions, the Nobel Peace Prizes. Jews just succeed, except when it comes to genocide and ethnic cleansing, in which we are utter failures. But they love to call us out for that while completely ignoring violence against the Jews. In fact, when asked about, hey, Amnesty International, you're a legitimate organization as far as we were informed, why don't we do something about anti-Semitism? They said, we don't want to specifically target one religion's problem, a hate against a specific religion. We want all religions to not have hate. So instead of we don't want to talk about anti-Semitism specifically. We want to just talk about, hey, don't hate people. All right, come on. We're all friends here. Oh, oops, 2 years earlier, they did an entire report on Islamophobia. Does this sound familiar? Sounds familiar to me. Oh, I know. Right now in the United States, a Jew is 6 times more likely to be a victim of a hate crime than a Muslim. Okay, anti-Semitism on the rise, Jew hatred rolling strong, probably at its highest level since World War II. So our government, the United States government, is going to do something about it. Joe Biden steps up to the mic with Kamala and lets us know that they're starting an initiative on Islamophobia. Every single time a Jew is attacked, a Jew is killed, every single time their mouthpieces say the same thing. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are bad. I'm sorry, I thought we weren't allowed to say all lives matter. Because imagine if every time a Black person was killed, instead of saying Black Lives Matter, I said Black and White Lives Matter, guys, which is exactly what they're doing. Exactly. There is no difference. If you can't see that, you just don't want to. Or you're an anti-Semite, a Jew hater, or a liar who lies to yourself and other people. But they have no problem with it. And every time something happens, and it's tragic, of course, like for instance, when that Palestinian boy was stabbed, the headlines all screamed the same thing. Palestinian boy stabbed in a hate crime 26 times as a result of the Israel-Hamas war. We know who the victim is. We know what class he belongs to, what designation, what demographic. We know that he was stabbed a lot of times. Horrific. We know it was a hate crime. Fact, a hate crime. We know even what the motivation was, the Israel-Hamas war. I mean, this is a hater of Muslims who stabbed this boy. And then a female rabbi is stabbed. Another woman is stabbed in the gut. A swastika is painted on her door. Guy is smashed in the head with a megaphone and dies, Paul Kessler, from some pro-Hamas asshole. Are these hate crimes? I don't know. The headlines, I hesitate to call them headlines because they were below the fold in some cases, just in the international section. Don't worry about it. The rabbi who was stabbed to death, woman who works for the synagogue, stabbed outside her home. That was the headline. That's it. We know where she worked. She worked at a synagogue. Not that she died, not that it was a hate crime, no motivation, no talk about who did it. In fact, underneath that in small print, it said that the police chief urged people not to assume motive. By the way, that was deemed not a hate crime. Paul Kessler, smashed in the head, blunt force trauma is what the autopsy said. He was murdered. The headline, I'm paraphrasing, man dies when he fell down. If you don't see the bias there, you just don't want to. So that's what Amnesty International does. They make sure that we know that one side, ethnic cleansing, genocide, apartheid, they use these words as weapons against Israel, but they don't talk about Palestinian leadership. They don't talk about the terrorism. They don't talk about rockets being launched into Israel. And when asked to specifically make a priority of anti-Semitism, they declined and made a priority of Islamophobia. By the way, what did Amnesty International say about Holocaust Part 2 that happened on October 7th, in which babies, women, pregnant women, elderly people, dementia patients, Holocaust survivors were raped, chopped apart, burned alive, tortured in front of their children, slicing open pregnant women's bellies and decapitating the babies, raping women, killing them, and then raping their corpses. Pretty bad stuff. What did they say about that? Over 1,000 people. What did they say? What did they say about the 220 people that were kidnapped and held hostage, put in cages, tortured? What did they say? Let me just look real quick. Nothing. Silence. They waited until Israel decided to retaliate in a war they didn't start to take out this terrorist organization. And then they decided to speak up with their lack of moral authority, with their Jew hatred. They decided to then speak up and say, hey, war crimes on all sides. By the way, war crime, another word that has a definition. War crime is a violation of the laws of war. Laws of war that are defined through the Geneva Convention and others. Very specific, laid out bullet point by bullet point. Intentionally killing civilians, intentionally killing civilians, intentionally killing prisoners of war, torture, taking hostages, sexual violence, pillaging, genocide, ethnic cleansing, no granting of quarter after surrender, putting children in the military. I don't know if you guys are picking up on what I'm putting down here, but every one of the war crimes I just mentioned was committed by the Palestinians. Every single one of them. And zero of them, zero, were committed by the Israelis. And yet Amnesty International decide to vilify Israel and exalt the Palestinian people. In fact, the oldest anti-hate group in the United States, the Anti-Defamation League, founded in 1913, wrote a letter to Amnesty International. I'm just going to read you the first paragraph. I am reaching out to express serious concern about the recent hostility displayed by Amnesty International and its employees towards Israel and its supporters, including the casting aspersions on the majority of those within the Jewish community who have deep ties to the Jewish state. This is right after there was hate crimes against the Jews from 2015 to 2020 that had risen 114%. ADL wrote that letter. Amnesty International didn't care much. They just kept doing what they do, which is lying about Israel, which is lying about the Jews, which is lying about the enemies of the Jews in order to make them look like the good guys. Amnesty International, another group you can dismiss if you're being honest. I could keep going right down the line with all of these groups that have a reputation, but I think you see what I'm saying. Between the press and these, let's call them NGOs because I'm being kind today, and the universities that allow hate and violence to occur against the Jews while making sure that everybody else is protected. Whether it's social media, which somehow accidentally, thank you, the Chinese, elevates Palestinian voices, anti-Israel voices, Jew hatred, anti-Semitism, and somehow stifles Israeli and Jewish voices. Now, why does that happen? That's interesting. Well, let's do some more stats, shall we? 25% of the world's population are Muslim. 0.2% of the world's population are Jewish. Well, with that in mind, even if every single Jew decided to tweet and report on bad tweets at the same time, and only a tiny little sliver of the Muslim population decided to do the same, they would still drown us out in a moment. When 1/4 fully of the world is pretty much indoctrinated to believe that Jews and Israel are a problem, and I'm being kind and just saying problem, then there is no world in which our voices can remain loud online. These aren't human beings that are looking at each tweet that's reported. It's an algorithm, it's a computer. And so when Russia and China and Qatar and who knows who else, Iran, has bot farms whose only job is to look for keywords and then report. That's all they do. Job. They're computers. Report, 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 report. They don't even need to break for lunch. Here's an example. Would anyone on the Palestinian side of this particular war use the word terrorist? I suppose a couple here and there are going to call the Israelis terrorists, but generally speaking, they're going to avoid that word. Why? Hamas aren't terrorists to them. They're freedom fighters. They're combatants. They're soldiers. They're just good-hearted guys that got fed up. Or as one kind soul at the Oakland City Council said, getting mad at Hamas for October 7th is like when a man who beats his wife gets mad because she finally fights back. So are they going to use the word terrorist? No. Israelis are. Jews are, because we're up against terrorism. We're up against terrorists. So if every tweet Every Instagram post and every Facebook post and every TikTok post that uses the word terrorist is automatically targeted. On the bot farm side, well, eventually all those places are going to get blocked. Right now, if you go to almost any profile that is pro-Israel, pro-Jewish, anti-terrorist, anti-Hamas, anti-Palestinian terrorist, all of them have a warning. Are you sure you want to add this? They spread a lot of misinformation. A group called Stop Anti-Semitism, for instance, their entire Instagram presence was curtailed. This can no longer be seen by people who are not following them. Very important information. Why is that? Because they reported on what was happening. I myself was kicked off Twitter for a week. Why? Because Shailene Woodley, one of the meat puppet actors who doesn't have a brain in her head unless she has a script written for her, posted a link to Jewish Voice for Peace, an organization that doesn't represent the Jews, doesn't have a clear voice, and isn't peaceful. In fact, they're literally Nazi apologists. They actually have Nazis and terrorists come and speak to their organization. They are actively for the destruction of the state of Israel. Whoever founded them knew to put the word Jewish in the title, because now people can say, look, even the Jews think that, even though they represent a sliver of a sliver of a sliver. So she posted a link to JVP, and I posted something because I've met her before. She didn't seem like a stupid person. My bad. And I posted, hey, you are amplifying a voice you shouldn't be amplifying. They're actually considered a terrorist organization in certain groups. They've been designated as such in certain places. Here's a link to the oldest anti-hate group in the United States, the one I just mentioned, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, giving you information about JVP. My comment was erased. It was taken down. I was admonished for hate speech, and I was told I couldn't post anything for a week. Posting a link to the ADL, guys. So how do I compete with that? How is it that when I go look at Michael Rappaport's Instagram, it says this guy spreads a lot of misinformation? I've watched a lot of his videos. I haven't seen any misinformation. Same thing with almost every pro-Jewish and pro-Israel profile that I found. We can't win online. And as if we have not one arm, but two arms tied behind our back in this particular fistfight, the biggest social media platform today is TikTok, owned by the Chinese, part of the current axis of evil. Not my opinion. Russia, China, Iran, axis of evil. And so you have 1/3 of the axis of evil telling our youth, our children, what to think, melting their brains, making them believe whatever they want, just like they're puppets. Don't believe me? The Chinese decided they were going to try something. They were going to see how long it would take to get the American youth to say the craziest, dumbest, most racist thing you can imagine. Now, my opinion is they didn't think it would work quite as well as it did, you know, kind of like a dog chasing a car. It's like, what's it going to do once it catches it? But they thought, let's try this. Maybe it'll be a slow burn, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. We'll get them to fall in love with Osama bin Laden. And so they amplified a post. They made sure, TikTok made sure they amplified that post of millions of people, that first lady. And what drives social media is not truth. It's not even emotion. It's not even that people feel something very strongly and they feel the need to put it up. The reason why certain things seem nutty and then everybody's talking about them and then it's no longer considered nutty is not because everybody suddenly had a come to Jesus moment where they all collectively felt something. They all came to a conclusion. No. You see one person getting likes, even if it's for crazy shit, and you're like, I want some likes, because that's our endorphin hit. That's what we want now. The likes. We don't care how we get them. So if you see someone posting, bin Laden's awesome, guys, and they're getting millions of views and likes, maybe you also want to post about how bin Laden's awesome. You know how I know that half of those people didn't read the letter that they purportedly read that gave them an existential crisis? They didn't even know what to do with themselves now that they'd read it and their mind had been opened. Because the letter is 8 pages long and half the people were like, read it, it's really quick, it's like 2 pages long. They were just saying things because they wanted the likes. that trend where people were doing what I looked like when I heard bin Laden had been killed, what I looked like when I read the letter and found out he was right. That thing, that unbelievable, stupid, insane thing that spread like wildfire, that should tell you everything. And the letter, by the way, it's not a great letter. It's not like the guy was Wadsworth. The letter basically says, I thought I would kill you all because you like Israel and you like freedom. That's pretty much the entire letter. Saved you 8 pages, guys. Don't love bin Laden. I could keep going, but I think you're getting the idea. This is a world that is currently designed to hate Jews, designed to hate Israel. Not only designed to hate, but designed to allow that hatred to be amplified, to go far and wide, to be heard and believed by many. If you're not seeing it, it's because you don't want to. It's because you hate the Jews so much that you are willing to close your eyes. I was asked recently, how do we let people know how bad the terrorists are, how bad the Hamas is? This person was so adamant that we would be able to find a way. They said, right now, everybody loves trans people. Everybody loves the LGBT. Everybody loves Black people. Everybody is protecting those groups. Everybody is working overtime to make sure that they are safe, that abortion rights are safe, that rape victims are heard, that women's groups are fighting for their right to survival, believe all women, Black Lives Matter, all of that stuff. She said, if we can find a way to let everybody know how the terrorists treat those people specifically. They hold Black slaves. They behead and throw gay people off of roofs. If you're trans, you're not making it real far in Gaza or the West Bank or pretty much any of the Muslim countries. How do we let people know that there are laws on the books that protect your rapist? How do we let people know that if you are married and your husband rapes you, then it's not rape because, he owns you. You can't even go anywhere without his permission or maybe even an escort. How do we let people know? How do we let people know that they raped all these women, these girls? One terrorist in an interrogation said that some people were trying to rape the babies, rape the old people, rape the people with developmental disabilities, raped people in wheelchairs, cut off the breasts of women while they were raping them, shot them in the head, and continued raping their corpse. How do we let them know? How do we let the entire world know that this group, all these groups, that we have now come together collectively as a humanity to protect are most at risk by this group that they're currently exalting, that they're currently marching for, that they're currently cheering for, that they're currently trying to give another place to? As if there aren't a bunch of Muslim countries and a bunch of Arab countries already. Give another one to this group. And I said, they know. Right now, people are testifying about the sexual violence that occurred by the Palestinian terrorists. You know what women's groups have to say? Zero. Silence. Nothing. When UN Women was asked to speak up, silence. They finally did tweet something. I think it took 7 weeks. And then they got a bunch of hate responses and they cowardly immediately took it down. I have a screenshot of it. I know it happened. It's gone now. And when asked in the press, well, why aren't you speaking up? Well, we more point stuff out, but the UN itself really deals with all of that, which is a lie. Me too, unless you're a Jew. Believe all women, unless you have that little star around your neck. Then shut up and go in the corner. You got what you deserved. It's just war. I'm sorry. You just told me about war crimes. Nope. No, not for you. Queers for Gaza, queers for Palestine, trans for Palestine, trans for Gaza. The mind boggles. She asked me, how can we let them know that these people, they're cheering for what they do to that group they know? In fact, while the war was going on, it's been less than 2 months while the war was going on in the West Bank, they decapitated a gay guy, by the way, who had been given asylum in Israel because he was gay and afraid of what they would do to him in his society. And then he just went back to visit family, and they beheaded him. They know. They already know. Everybody knows. They call that pinkwashing. They say, don't tell us how well you treat gays. You know, Israel having the greatest gay population in the Middle East and the biggest gay pride parade and gay celebration in, I believe, all of Asia. No, don't tell us about that. That's just pinkwashing. You tell us about how well you treat people. We don't want to hear about that, or how badly they treat people. We don't want to hear about that. You're a Jew. Stay quiet. If you try to live based on your record, we will attack you for it. There's actual neighborhoods in Gaza where they keep the black slaves. Black Lives Matter, in their doctrine from day one, in their charter, from the first day Black Lives Matter existed, they were anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. They didn't hide it. And then, as if to make you really feel stupid for ever having supported them, as if to rub it in your face, you stupid Jews. They then had one chapter, put up a poster, and what's the logo they decided to use? What's the emblem? Palestinian terrorist in a paraglider, going to go rape and murder people at the Nova Festival. What are you going to do about it, Jew? You're a Jew. You marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? King loved his rabbi, loved his Jewish friends. Jews were on the front lines of that particular fight, as they have been on all the fights for human rights, personally standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Fuck you, Jews. In fact, we're going to make a movie about that particular walk to Selma, the March on Selma. We're just going to leave out the Jews. It's not necessary. Look, there's a lot. There's an A story, there's a B story, a C story. We're going to do more other stories, all these side things. Let's just leave out the Jews. We can't accidentally let them have any part of something that was so instrumental in our freedom, because then we'd accidentally like them. Instead, we're going to make sure that we ingrain as much as possible this Jew hatred within the Black community. Whether it's Dave Chappelle, great article recently called Dave Chappelle and the Normalizing of Black Anti-Semitism. Whether it's Dave Chappelle, whether it's Ice Cube, whether it's Nick Cannon, whether it's Lewis Hamilton, whether it's Kyrie Irving, whether it's LeBron tweeting about getting that Jewish money, whether it's Obama pretending to be an ally, only to decimate Israel and the Jewish people by what he did at the UN, or the remarks he gave recently, in which he put the blame on both sides for a terrorist organization coming and raping and murdering people. Juliana Margulies just got in trouble for pointing this out. Now, she was angry. She was on a podcast. She may have been indelicate in how she put it, but she wasn't wrong. We're at a breaking point here. The world right now needs to stand up and take notice, needs to take responsibility, needs to stand up and say enough. Jewish voices being silenced, Israeli voices being silenced, Jews and Israelis being vilified, being smeared, Jew hatred coming from governments like South Africa, coming from NGOs, coming from prominent celebrities, coming from government officials. Hi, Cori Bush, you dumpster fire. Hi, Rashida Tlaib. Hi, Ilhan Omar. Hi, AOC, you brainless numbskull, and more. Unfortunately, more and more and more. Enough is enough. Enough all lives mattering this situation, lying about it or ignoring it altogether. It's time for us to take action. And whether that means coming at the media, whether that means coming at social media, whether that means coming at the universities who allow this hatred to spread, because hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, of Qatari money is funding them now. If you're not aware of that, look it up. The same universities where the student groups, SJP, already had signs and already had organized protests for October 8th before the world was aware of what happened on October 7th, as if they had some inside scoop, direct line of communication to somebody who knew what was coming. It's time to take this to governmental levels. It's time to hold people accountable. Enough is enough.